Credit to Inc.com for this post. 30 ideas from psychology that will make you saner and more successful, explained in 280 characters or less. A clinical psychologist and founder offers tweet-length explanations of some of the most useful concepts in her field. Number 1. Intellectualization. Using reason and intellect to avoid feeling our emotions. Intellectualizers are more comfortable with logic and rationality than emotionality, and are good at speaking through things without actually feeling them. This can be a strength but also a problem. Meditation teachers also caution against letting your cleverness get in way of your wisdom. Number 2. Fear of breakdown. The things we fear the most are things that have already happened to us, but were too painful to consciously experience at the time. Example: my fear of bad things happening is a fear of facing the bad things I've already experienced. Number 3. Sublimation. One of the healthier defense mechanisms. Taking socially unacceptable impulses or desire and channeling them into socially acceptable actions or behavior. Example: taking a boxing class to deal with anger and aggression. Number 4. Acting out. When we are unable to voice repressed thoughts or feelings, we sometimes act them out through behavior. Example: showing up late to therapy or forgetting payment instead of realizing and telling the therapist that we are upset with the treatment. Number 5. Survivor guilt. A feeling we sometimes have when we survive or thrive in ways that loved ones are not surviving or thriving. We might unconsciously avoid or sabotage success to get rid of this guilt. Example: not going after promotion because your partner just got fired. Number 6. True empathy. Allowing yourself to actually feel what someone else is feeling in order to understand them. If you intellectually understand what someone is feeling but you don't feel it yourself, that's not empathy, it's sympathy. True empathy can be uncomfortable and difficult. Number 7. Capacity to be alone. A paradoxical ability to be alone with someone else while someone else is present. This is a developmental achievement that not everyone reaches. Imagine the child who can self-entertain while parents are nearby versus the one who needs to be entertained in every moment. Number 8. True self/false self. When we are young, we borrow our identity from others, our false self. If given the freedom to explore, we get rid of false self as we discover our true self. But we often hold on to false parts without realizing it, out of fear of disappointing others. Tons of research suggests you are really going to regret not letting go of that false self. Number 9. Psychosomatization. Physical manifestation of emotional states often happens because we are unable to feel things emotionally. Example: feeling nauseous when what you really are is anxious. We store our issues in our tissues. Number 10. Complex trauma. When something traumatic happens before we have had the time, resources, and support to recover from a previous traumatic experience ad infinitum. Because increasingly difficult to heal, think of a repeatedly injured muscle that is never given any recovery time. Number 11. Repetition compulsion. Our tendency to recreate things over and over until we understand them. Example: finding yourself in the same kind of relationship again and again, but not understanding why. Being unintentionally attracted to work environments that mirror your family dynamic. Number 12. Parapraxis, also known as a Freudian slip. A parapraxis is an unintended action that might seem like a simple accident or coincidence, but actually points to a repressed or uncomfortable truth that we are avoiding. Number 13. Flight into health. occurs when we seem to make a spontaneous recovery when faced with addressing particular issues in therapy. Example: I have been talking about something painful when suddenly I feel totally better and decide that therapy has worked and I am ready to stop going. Number 14, gaslighting, a manipulation technique in which we use psychological means to trick someone into questioning their own sanity. While gaslighting is a sociopathic in its extreme form, we all engage in subtle forms. Example: saying, I don't know what you're talking about, when you do. As many of us unfortunately know, gaslighting is a workplace staple at some companies. Number 15, extreme envy. Envy that leads to a desire to destroy something another person has that you want, not because you don't want the other person to have it, but because them having it forces you to confront your feelings about not having it. Note: experts claim that there is also such a thing as healthy envy that pushes us to become better version of ourselves. Number 16, a good enough parent. A perfect parent does not prepare their child for an imperfect world. The good enough parent meets their child's need enough of the time that the child feels safe, but not so often that the child never learns to adapt to unfavorable circumstances. Here is a huge study saying. Anyway, number 17, autoplastic versus alloplastic adaptation. Appropriately and advantageously adapting our own self to an environment, meditating so we can handle stress, versus appropriately and advantageously adapting our environment to meet our needs, choosing a job that complements our work style. Number 18, reaction formation, a defense mechanism where we worry that our true feelings or desires are unacceptable. So we want to convince ourselves or others that we feel opposite way. We feel the opposite way, often in a very exaggerated performance. The example Anhalt gives is rabidly anti-LGBTQ plus politicians who get caught having furtive same-sex encounters. Bashan. When a therapist doesn't see an unhealthy dynamic with a patient because they are invested in it continuing. Example: patient is being excessively complimentary to avoid facing their anger towards the therapist. See reaction formation. But the therapist doesn't realize. I can imagine there are quite a few bosses guilty of this too. Number 20, the frame. Anything that provides reliable structure in therapy. Example: starting and ending on time, being in the same room every week. If we can trust the stability of the frame, we are more likely to come apart in therapy and thus access messy but important parts of who we are. Nameless dread. The dreadful feeling of emptiness and non understandable anxiety that we face as infants because we don't understand our environment, but that we also face periodically throughout life. Other peoples have this too. What a relief. Number 22, manifest versus latent dream content. The literal subject matter of a dream versus the underlying meaning being symbolized. Example: I dream of a motorcycle, manifest, to represent my desire to escape, latent. Healthy narcissism. Narcissism has a bad rap, but we all need a bit of it. Healthy narcissism is believing in yourself while maintaining an ability to enjoy the success of others. Kids whose belief in themselves is not supported seek validation in unhealthy ways throughout life. Evenly suspended attention. The therapist's attitude of not directing their attention to any one thing in particular while listening to the patient. This prevents them from prematurely foreclosing the possibility of surprise and discovery of other important things. This reminded me of a lot of career related advice and how to be a better listener. Omnipotent fantasy, the belief, which at its core is really a wish, that we have more power over something than we actually do. Example, believing we can save people in our life from their pain, believing that if we worry enough bad things won't happen. Transitional object, an object that represents a parent which allows a child to transition from being totally dependent to something independent. Example, teddy bear or blanket. Adults have them too. Example, keeping a memento of a loved one so you feel close to them in their absence. Number 27, free association. A technique in therapy where you freely share any thoughts going through your mind without censoring yourself. Your words don't need to be coherent or relevant. This allows you to access deeper unconscious material and discover unexpected thoughts. Number 8, splitting. Putting all of our good feelings in one place and our bad feelings in another, because it's difficult to hold them at the same time. Example, being very angry with one of our parents while being very forgiving of the other, even though neither is terrible or perfect. Number 29, depressive position. The depressive position. When we can stop splitting, see above, and tolerate the fact that nothing is all good or all bad. Called the depressive position because it's depressing. Holding both at the same time requires maturity and compassion. Number 30, reality testing. The process of helping someone distinguish their thoughts, feelings, and fears from what's objectively true in reality. Example, if a patient says everyone hates them, a therapist might point out external evidence that suggests otherwise. Anhalt is a clinical psychologist and co-founder of COA, a startup which bills itself as the first ever gym for mental health. As Green noted, Anhalt is also a social media pro tweeting pithy, entertaining insights. Perhaps the most useful of these was pinned to the top of her timeline, a long thread offering succinct explanations of dozens of the most useful concepts in psychology, all explained in 280 characters or less. Some of them, such as evenly suspended attention, appear quite therapist specific at first, but quick reflections indicate, such as gaslighting and omnipotent fantasy, they could be they could be just as useful for performance review conversations as psychotherapy. Other concepts workplace standbys. Taking the time to understand them will make you better at understanding human beings, and that will make you better at just about any job. So here they are in an easy to read format. You can check out the complete thread on Twitter to see the jokey memes and real life examples Anhalt links to, as well as the fascinating conversation her tweets quicked off. I have added my own links to further reading or examples in few instances as well.